Yes, thank you, Mr. President and Senators. AB 621 will provide port trucking companies an opportunity to voluntarily participate in a limited amnesty program by entering into a settlement agreement with labor commissioners. Over the years, there has been a serious problem with these misclassification of port truck drivers. This bill represents a common sense compromise in allowing the parties to come together, rectify the situation, and move forward in a productive manner. AB 621 will incentivize motor carriers in the port trucking industry to make the right decision for the benefit of all interested stakeholders. I respectfully ask for your aye vote on AB 621.
Thank you, Senator Hall. Members, debate or discussion? Seeing none, Secretary, please call the roll.
Allen. Aye. Anderson. No. Bates. No. Bell. Aye. Berryhill. No. Block. Aye. Cannella. No. De Leon. Fuller. Gaines.
No.
No. Galgiani. Glazer. Hall. Aye. Hancock. Aye. Hernandez. Aye. Hertzberg. Hill. Aye. Weso. Aye. Huff. No. Jackson. Lada. Aye. Leno. Aye. Leva. Aye. Liu. Aye. McGuire. Aye. Mendoza. Aye. Mitchell. Aye. Monning. Aye. Morlock. Morrell. No. Wynn. No. Nielsen. Pan. Aye. Pavley. Roth. Aye. Runner. No. Stone. No. Vidak. No. Wachowski. Aye. Wolk. Wolk, aye. Nielsen, no. Glazer, aye.
Senator Hall moves the call. Members, we can move to the next five will be file items 140, 141, 142, 143, and 144. Starting with file item 140, Senator Runner. Secretary, please read.
Assembly Bill 517 by Assemblymember Gallagher and according to sexual health education.
Senator Runner.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. This bill has bipartisan support, was a unanimous vote in State Education Committee, and it's my pleasure to present Assembly Bill 517 by Assemblymember Gallagher. It provides parents the tools they need to join an important and honest conversation regarding sexual education of their children. Specifically, AB 517 allows parents to make copies of the non-copyrighted sexual material that will be distributed to their children by outside consultants during sexual health lessons. To defray the costs, the bill authorizes the school districts to charge up to 10 cents per page for the copies. It would also list the training that outside consultants have in their field of expertise on their existing notice that is provided to parents before the instruction actually occurs. Current law, sections 519.33 and 519.34 of the Education Code require students be encouraged to discuss with their parents about human sexuality. This bill will help facilitate students and parents having meaningful dialogue and accomplishes the goals of that law. This bill is in the culmination of multiple stakeholder meetings, has received wide bipartisan support, and I'd ask you for your vote for aye.
Thank you, Senator Runner. Members, debate or discussion? Senator Block.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, as my colleague said, this bill did pass through the Education Committee. At that point, the bill had not been fully analyzed by Planned Parenthood. We do have a very late opposition. While in your file, it says there's no opposition on file. That was as of September 4th. But as of September 8th, Planned Parenthood submitted a letter that says, and I quote, "The bill fails to provide an updated, comprehensive approach to sexual health education, imposes unnecessary administrative burden on schools, and we believe stands in conflict with the California Constitution. For those reasons, I and Planned Parenthood urge you to vote no on this measure."
Thank you, Senator Block. Members, further debate or discussion?
Oh, can I close? Oh.
Yeah. Senator Runner,
hi.
You may close, yes.
I'd like to close, thank you. I also...
excuse me, Senator Runner. I'm sorry, Senator Liu. I
Thank
apologize.
you. I do have a question to the presenter.
Yes.
My understanding is that Assemblymember Gallagher did make an amendment to the bill that eliminated the conflict with Planned Parenthood this last week on Friday. And so I just want to know whether or not that indeed was done.
Yes, Senator Runner.
Absolutely, that was what I was going to address. He's been working with Planned Parenthood this summer and took an amendment to take away the ample time for them to review it. And as far as he knew, until this floor alert came this morning, they were neutral on the bill. So I can only give you what I've heard from the author, but Planned Parenthood has been working with him and took off their opposition a couple of months ago. And today was the first we saw there was a floor alert about it. And if you have questions about it, I have a information sheet that really answers all the questions that Planned Parenthood
do you mind if we just put this over for a few minutes until we clarify this conversation about Planned Parenthood?
Senator Runner,
right.
would you like to hold the vote?
Yes.
and Bring
Let's hold
this
the vote.
measure forward later. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Members will move then to file item 141, Senator Berryhill. Secretary, please read.
Assembly Bill 142 by Assemblymember Bigelow, an act relating to wild and scenic rivers.
Senator Berryhill.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President and members. This is actually a really good bill. It's a bill that many folks in my district are tremendously passionate about. It addresses the future designation of the McCollum River. McCollum River's potential designation in the wild and scenic system has been a hot button of topic for the past 2 decades and was very controversial here just this last year.
Excuse me, Senator Berryhill. Members, could we please show respect to the senator as he's presenting his legislation? Senator Berryhill.
Thank you. The time has come for the stakeholders to stop bickering and come together to find a long-term solution for the river. AB 142 does not place a wild and scenic designation on the McCollum River. Rather, it represents a compromise between the various stakeholders. It asks the Secretary of the California Natural Resources Agency to conduct a study of the river and present a clear recommendation on the suitability or non-suitability of entering the McCollum River into the wild and scenic system. The question is, can the river, the 6 utilities that use the river for power and water, and the people who live on and near the river even entertain a wild and scenic designation? This study will tell us one way or another. The study is to be completed and presented to the legislature by December 31st, 2017. Currently, there is an interim protection on the river to allow the Natural Resources Agency to study the free-flowing nature of the river for the duration of the study. The interim protection will end either when the recommendation is made by the Secretary on December 31st, 2021, whichever comes first. There's also a cost-sharing component for this legislation which directs locals in the state to enter into a cost share agreement which is estimated to be $250,000. Passing this bill will give all of us devoted to the river the data necessary to make the best decision for the river. My constituents do live here. The McCollum River is their water source. Locals enjoy leisure activities on and near the river throughout the year. We want what is best for the river and for our communities. We've had widespread bipartisan support for this bill, and I appreciate it, and I vote.
Thank you, Senator Berryhill. Debate or discussion? Senator Hancock.
Yeah, this is a very good bill, and I rise in support of the bill as well. Some members have mentioned to me that last year I was carrying a bill for the designation. I am happy to see that we're going to move forward with the study. Last year people weren't prepared to do that, but I think it's a very good step. And thanks Senator Berryhill and Assemblymember Bigelow for moving us forward on this. Ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Hancock. Members, further debate or discussion? Senator Berryhill, would you like to close?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that thank you for your comments, and sometimes this system actually works.
Thank you, Senator Berryhill. I just want to announce that we will be announcing the vote from here forward. Secretary, please call the roll.
Allen. I. Anderson. I. Bates. I. Bell. I. Berryhill. I. Block. I. Cannella. I. De Leon. Fuller. I. Gaines.
Aye.
I. Galgiani. I. Glazer. Hall. Hancock. I. Hernandez. Hertzberg. Hernandez, I. Hertzberg. Hill. Hertzberg, I. Hill, I. Hueso. I. Huff. I. Jackson. I. Lara. I. Leno. I. Leva. I. Liu. I. McGuire. I. Mendoza. Mitchell. I. Monning. I. Morlock. I. Morrell. I. Wynn. I. Nilsson. Pan. Pavley. I. Roth. I. Pan, I. Runner. Mendoza, I. Runner, I. Stone. I. Vidak. I. Wachowski. Wolk. Wolk, I.
Secretary, please call absent members.
Glazer, I. De Leon. Hall. I. Nielsen. Wachowski. Aye.
Ayes 38, no 0. Measure passes. Members, we're going to be calling the roll twice and then taking the final vote so we can keep things moving along. Senator Bates, for what purpose do you rise?
To call a Republican caucus in the lounge, please.
Okay. Republican caucus. Thank you.
This bill was crafted with key stakeholders, and it's a thoughtful approach to streamlining e-bike regulations without sacrificing safety and local authorities to impose additional restrictions if they so choose. It's received broad bipartisan support in both houses, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Allen. Members, debate or discussion? Seeing none, Secretary, please call the roll.
Allen. Aye. Anderson. Aye. Bates. Aye. Bell. Aye. Berryhill. Aye. Block. Aye. Cannella. Aye. De Leon. Fuller. Gaines. Galgiani. Gaines, aye. Galgiani. Glazer. Aye. Hall. Hancock. Hernandez. Aye. Hertzberg. Aye. Hill. Aye. Hueso. Huff. Aye. Jackson. Aye. Lara. Leno. Leva. Aye. Liu. Aye. McGuire. Aye. Mendoza. Mitchell. Monning. Aye. Morlock. Aye. Morrell. Aye. Wynn. Aye. Nilsson. Aye. Pan. Aye. Pavley. Aye. Roth. Aye. Runner. Aye. Stone. Aye. Vidak. Aye. Wachowski. Aye. Wolk. Wolk, aye. Mitchell, aye.
Senator Allen moves the
Lara,
call.
aye.
We still have members missing off the floor, so we'll be moving the call on the future bills that we'll be bringing up. We're going to move to file item 143, Pro Tem De Leon. Not at his desk. File item 144, Senator Cannella. Secretary, please read.
Assembly Bill 2 by Assemblymember Alejo, an act going to economic development.
Senator Cannella.
Thank you, Mr. President. AB 2 will allow certain blighted areas to create a new entity called the Community Revitalization Investment Authority to work towards tackling issues faced by our state's most disadvantaged communities. In 2011, the state dissolved its redevelopment agencies, driven primarily by the cost of redevelopment to the state's general fund, but the needs of struggling communities did not go away. AB 2 will work to change this by investing property tax increments of consenting local agencies, other than schools, to improve our local communities. This will grow jobs, reduce crime, repair deteriorating and inadequate infrastructure, clean up brownfields, and promote affordable housing. This bill also requires 25% of the funds to be set aside for affordable housing and will help rebuild impoverished communities across the state. If we don't fix our existing neighborhoods, then costly city problems like traffic will worsen. The bill has received bipartisan support and is supported by a host of cities, the California Chamber of Commerce, CBIA, and housing advocates. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Cannella. Members, debate or discussion? Senator Nielsen, would you like to speak to this issue? Senator Nielsen.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, this is the resurrection of the redevelopment agencies, the failed redevelopment agencies. Now, they worked in some areas where I was privileged to represent, but they also did a great disservice by the vast accruing of revenues that they utilized to usurp private property and put it to what they declared might be a better use, as if it were their choice all the time to be a better use. They absolutely exploited and will continue to exploit, under the provision to this bill, the seizure of private property under eminent domain, whereby they will seize that property, allow another then property owner to develop it, enjoying the boon of getting it on the cheap. Any reforms needed to be inculcated in such legislation that would resurrect and not allow the excesses of these redevelopment agencies. Sadly, this bill does not accomplish that purpose. And somehow or another, in the years since those redevelopment agencies went out of existence, doesn't seem like California cities fell into precipitous decline. Seems like we're surviving. But I entreat my colleagues not to resurrect the redevelopment agencies without the needed reforms to keep them under control and to contain them, and not to allow them to run roughshod over private property in California, or to reward certain interests, letting them develop as would be the will of some local community. I urge a no vote.
Thank you, Senator Nielsen. Senator Huff.
Members, I rise in support of this measure. You know, when this legislature was in the process of extinguishing redevelopment, Senator Rod Wright and myself led the challenge. We led the charge to protect redevelopment because it was one of the few economic developments that cities had, and it was also one of the few ways to generate revenue for our affordable housing. But against our efforts, we killed redevelopment. Now, those agencies had eminent domain, and while there was a lot of scare stories going around, there had been very few uses of eminent domain. And in fact, in this version of trying to resurrect an economic development tool for our local communities, it does have amendments that allow for community input. And if a majority of them say no, they can't bring it up for a period of time. So it has more oversight than the old agencies had. And it was always our desire that you fix the things that were wrong with redevelopment rather than kill it. But that's history. Now we have an opportunity to give economic development tool to our local agencies. And if there are abuses in it, then we as a legislature ought to fix it again. But we have to get something for them. There are deteriorating cities. There are deteriorating parts of cities that need some tool to revitalize them. This is the method to do it. I urge your aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Huff. Further debate or discussion? Seeing none, Senator Cannella, would you like to close?
Thank you, Mr. President. I understand some of the concerns with redevelopment. I can say as a public official, I was on Planning Commission, City Council, and Mayor. We use eminent domain exactly 0 times. So I don't think it's widely being abused, but we certainly need to be careful when we use eminent domain. And this AB 2 does not change Prop 99 that passed in 2008 with over 62% of the vote, which prohibits the ability of a public agency to take a single-family home for economic development purposes. So I know we get fearful about eminent domain. I certainly understand that, but I don't see it being abused. Secondly, cities have no tools whatsoever for investment in their community. Redevelopment was really the only tool. Now that we've taken that away, most cities have a majority of their general fund that goes towards public safety purposes. Very little is left to invest in their community. This is a voluntary program. If the districts don't want to participate, they don't have to participate. So I wish this went much further. I wish we could go back to the day that we killed redevelopment and bring it back, because I thought it was an excellent program, but we can't. I think this is a good first step. Hopefully we can continue to grow this measure and expand the opportunities for cities. With that, I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Cannella. We'll be announcing the vote on this measure. Secretary, please call the vote.
Allen. Aye, Anderson. No, Bates. No, Bell. Aye, Berryhill. Aye, Block. Aye, Cannella. Aye, De Leon. Fuller. Gaines.
No.
No, Gaggiani. Aye, Glazer. Hall. Aye, Hancock. Aye, Hernandez. Aye, Hertzberg. Aye, Hill. Aye, Weso. Aye, Huff. Jackson. Aye, Jackson. Aye, Lara. Leno. Aye, Leva. Aye, Liu. McGuire. Aye, Mendoza. Aye, Mitchell. Aye, Monning. Aye, Morlock. No, Morrell. No, Wynn. Nilsson. No, Pan. Aye, Pavley. Aye, Roth. Aye, Runner. Aye. Stone. Vidak. No. Wykowski. Aye. Wolk. Wolk, aye. Stone, no. Wynn, no.
Secretary, call the absent members.
Glazer, aye. De Leon. Fuller. Latta. Liu. Aye.
Ayes 28, noes 9. Measure passes. Members, we're now going to move to file item 146. Senator Bates. Secretary, please read.
Assembly Bill 388 by Assemblymember Chang, an act relating to housing.
Great. Senator Bates.
Thank you, Mr. President. And members, this bill previously passed our floor 40-0. There were minor technical amendments needed to clarify the language of the bill. You'll find those on page 5, line 16 of the bill itself. I ask once again for your aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Bates. Debate or discussion? Members, would there be an objection to unanimous roll call? Seeing and hearing none, ayes 38, noes 0, measure passes. We'll now move on to file item 147. Senator Bates, Secretary, please read.
Assembly Bill 759 by Assemblymember Linder, an act relating to recreational vehicles.
Senator Bates.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, AB 759 by Assemblymember Linder clarifies the operations of the new motor vehicle board and its oversight of automobile and RV franchise agreements. While AB 759 is primarily a technical code cleanup bill, it makes one substantive change to current law. It authorizes the common industry practice of RV dealers selling remaining units after a franchise agreement is ended. AB 759 is the product of multiple meetings with stakeholders, passed unanimously throughout the process with no opposition. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Bates. Members, debate or discussion? Seeing none. Members, any objection to unanimous roll call? Seeing and hearing none. Ayes 38, no 0. Measure passes. Now going to move to file item 148. Senator Pavley. Secretary, please read.
Assembly Bill 1390 by Assemblymember Alejo and Act relating to groundwater.
Senator Pavley.
Yes, thank you very much, members. As most of you have been aware, Assemblymember Alejo and I have both been working together on similar bills, and the topic mainly on groundwater adjudication. We had hearings last year, informational hearings that showed that we need to expedite the process and get rid of some of the time sinks on groundwater adjudication. Those kinds of reductions in time sinks, frankly, when you go through adjudication of a groundwater basin, determining who gets how much water with all the overlying property owners, it's a lawyer's dream. It takes about 20 years and counting to sometimes go through that process. We think with these reforms, it will be quicker regarding notification and other parts. But let's look what's in this bill. This bill by Assemblymember Alejo is a bipartisan bill. It's sponsored by the California Farm Bureau and has the support of Cal Chamber and Western Growers. It's a bill that will bring new efficiency to the process of adjudicating groundwater rights in groundwater basins. AB 1390 is an Assemblymember Alejo's companion bill to my Senate Bill 226, and it's been wonderful working with his office, both of which have been extensively negotiated between my office, the Assemblymember's office. The administration has signed off on these amendments, agricultural interests, water agencies, and others. When the governor signed the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, or SGMA, last year, there was an interest by all to work on streamlining the adjudication process, and we've done just that. The goal of AB 1390 is to clarify court procedures that apply to comprehensive groundwater adjudications to reduce the time and improve the efficiency of the process, thus reducing costs. Specific provisions of the bill will encourage early settlement to avoid undue disruption of local groundwater planning. The bill has received unanimous bipartisan support through the process. I respectfully ask for your aye vote. My bill and Assemblymember Alejo's bills will be joined together, and I look forward to the passage of this bill by Assemblymember Alejo.
Thank you, Senator Pavley. Senator Nielsen.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, the present legislation, in my opinion, is a product of the failures of the past. Sustainable groundwater legislation that passed a little over a year ago, and really in the dark of night, without thorough reviewing or without thorough committee hearings, created a huge problem for our formerly fairly sacred groundwater in California. We certainly do have a groundwater challenge in California. Drought has contributed to the decline of it. Pumping has contributed to the decline of it, and the lack of surface storage, which we have yet to address, has contributed to that. But what has happened over the last 2 years in drought-related legislation, this legislature has given agencies of government dictatorial control over both surface and groundwater. Surface water in drought legislation year before last that empowered the Water Board to usurp even pre-1914 water rights and long-standing senior water rights, which has now happened. Commendably, the board has attempted to do that with restraint. But to the point of groundwater, finally, deficiencies were found. And many organizations that are now flying around this building opposing this legislation did not object to those former bills. In fact, even some supported it. And were nowhere to be found all of this early year in committee hearing after committee hearing where I raised these very issues that I'm raising here on the floor. And I would look out over the audience for some of the colleagues that should be supporting the position I was taking, and I saw no one. Kind of reminds me of a biblical verse, and I saw no one. It's a pretty lonely time. Well, this particular bill does at least make an attempt related to our groundwater. And let me put it simply. Would you, as a private property owner, one with an agricultural, a domestic, an industrial well, or one even with a municipal well, and the cities better not think they're going to be exempt from the water police because they're coming your way too. Would you rather go to an agency of government to argue your case or to a court of law? I, most assuredly, these days would opt for a court of law because many agencies have now put themselves above the law. And this does permit an adjudicatory process whereby the landowner can assert their rights. Now, there are still water code provisions that I've studied and talked to water attorneys about that give us comfort, even in terms of what had happened last year. But this is an attempt to, if you will, get the private property owner an open venue into the courts to defend, if not protect, their groundwater rights. It is indeed a step in the right direction. It sets in place what I would call procedures for a comprehensive adjudication, considering many, many issues that most assuredly should be considered, such any action related to those rights to extract the water from underneath your land minimally interferes with the timely completion and implementation of a groundwater management plan, the sustainable plans that I've talked about. There's a lot of very careful language that has been negotiated and a lot of very fine water attorneys that have dedicated their energies. And I believe that it's well worthy of support. And some of the frenzy of activity here in the last dying moments of this session would be amusing if they weren't blameworthy. Blameworthy as in, where were you when we needed you? Well, let's just say this is an attempt to take it back, to roll back some of the excesses of the legislation, the Sustainable Groundwater Management Plan last year. And keep in mind, one of the fundamental tenets of that legislation last year was local control, local control. Now understand, groundwater has always been the subject and the purview of local control and of the right to the water underneath your property. It's a little bit different than a private property right, but it is a sacred right nonetheless. But local government were the controlling powers. And last year's legislation made much of saying that, oh, this is about local control, when it wasn't. Because if the state doesn't like your local plan, guess who has the final say? The state, the agencies of government. I submit, if I'm going to roll my dice for my land and my property and my water, these days, I'd rather roll the dice for the court than the state government agencies who frankly think they have, and in many cases do have, more power than your legislators and the court. I urge an aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Nielsen. Members, further debate or discussion? Seeing none, Senator Pavley, would you like to close?
Thank you very much. I want to thank fellow Bulldog from Fresno State, Senator Jim Nielsen, for his comments, and I think I'll use that in my close, but I just want to assure everyone that these bills are procedural. They do not interfere or alter groundwater rights and do not hinder the Groundwater Management Agency process. Senator Nielsen brings up some very good points, and I appreciate his support on this measure. Ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Pavley. Members, would there be any objection to unanimous roll call? Seeing and hearing none. Ayes 39. No, 0. Measure passes. Right.